Oh, hey mates, my name's Captain Cordell, and today we're back again doing like a little another Pixel Box podcast. Today I am joined by Shweep, which is the creator of the game Cryopolis that I played a little while ago. Would you like to introduce yourself, Shweep?
Hey, yeah, I go by Shweep, or at Schweinheap on Twitter. I've been making games for a while now. I made Cryopolis in about a month for the Indie Game Maker contest, and yeah, I've been doing a lot of game making, sort of game jam stuff as a sort of my background.
Hmm. And as always, you can find Shweep's Twitter. You can find the Cryopolis game, the itch.io, and all that stuff down below if you're interested in checking that out. Make sure you go on to Twitter and you follow Shweep and show him a lot of love. So, without further ado, I'd like to get started.
Okay.
And like last time, if you have any questions for me, if you want to ask me anything or kind of pick my brain, go ahead. I highly encourage it. It's just kind of to make more of a calm atmosphere, to where it's more of a conversation and not more of an interview. So, our first question is, what led you to make Cryopolis?
Well, I guess the first thing was the contest that I did it for, which was the Indie Game Making Contest 2018, I believe. And it had like cash prizes, so that's kind of a big motivator. But it was mainly also that I made a game before that was also made in a month and also kind of a similar genre called Nemoral,
Hmm.
and I wanted to just basically Nemoral was kind of like a abandoned haunted house kind of setting, so it's kind of generic, and I kind of want to do something a little more different, a little more like, I don't know, like dystopian, like metal rushed kind of setting. But it was a little more ambitious than what No Moral had going for. So there are a lot of things with Cryopolis where I was kind of experimenting and doing different things from No Moral and stuff like that. So it was like kind of a process, I guess, of realizing that like with No Moral, the horror game before it, I didn't have time to put in like a final boss sequence or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So in Cryopolis, I was like, oh, I'm gonna put a boss sequence at the very end or whatever. But then I didn't have time to do the other stuff that the previous game had. So it was kind of this interesting process of experimenting with the horror genre, I guess. Was sort of the core of Cryopolis. I had all these like story ideas that I didn't have time to implement after a point, and that was also another issue that cropped up.
So, what I can derive from that, from the context clues, was that not the full Cryopolis? Was there supposed to be more added to it?
Uh, I would say it was sort of a vertical slice, where it's like you kind of get the general game flow or the game loop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I was going to expand on it if it had like gotten I guess, the prize, but I wasn't really 100% sure because I was also kind of gauging the reception and whatnot, and I might just make another game that's completely different, or continue it. It was just kind of, I just wanted to make a contained thing first that
Yeah.
was basically, like I'm not 100% sure if I'll continue it or not at this point, but um if I don't, it's just that's sort of what the game is, as its own thing, really.
Yeah. Well, it's very good for what it is. I got a lot of general vibes. It was really dystopian. It kind of put the sense of unease and the atmosphere really built up from it. Coming in and entering the game, it was kind of this sense of bewilderment and experiencing the unknown, and then going through it and having all these different interactions and these different events happening. It really set the atmosphere, and it was such a great game.
Yeah, I really like experimenting with like this sound design and kind of knowing when to put not a whole lot of noise in and when to put a lot of noise, and kind of I don't know, I guess I don't know where I get I see it, like there's a lot of games where the audio design is kind of like it has music constantly going on,
Yeah.
and and I try to like I don't know, I kind of like it when games are just silent for most of the time. Like have you played a game called Dark Souls?
Yes.
Yeah, that game doesn't even have music until the boss, right?
Yeah.
Most of or there might be some sequences where there's music, but for the most part, like it was just the sound, the footsteps, the sort of like when something does happen, you notice it right away, kind of thing.
Hmm.
That I really like about games in that nature. So
I will say that when I was playing through Cryopolis, and any game that I'm playing through, like a horror genre game that doesn't have music, the first thing that I take note of is that there is no music in the area, and I just kind of I get the presence of the area, the feeling of dread, because in a normal game, if you hear music, that should motivate the player. It should make the player want to play more. But in a horror game, it makes you want to play more, but not because it makes you cheery or lighthearted. It makes you want to play more because you want to know what happens next. And it creates that suspense. So that's what I strive for in horror games. And I absolutely despise it when horror games try to overload you with jump scares and flashing lights, and they do all these loud noises. You don't need that. If you want to make good horror, make it suspenseful. Make me on the edge of my seat. And that's what Cryopolis did a lot for me. They didn't have a lot of jump scares, but it was just the atmosphere that it built up. Hearing my footsteps as I walked through the area was the most dreadful thing I could think about, because all I was hearing was my footsteps. There was nothing. No signs of life, no music, no actions, nothing. And it was terrifying because it gave me this feeling that I was the only one here. It was just me alone in this place that I had no clue what to expect from.
yeah, I guess like in real life, that's kind of how it is a lot of times where you're kind of walking and there's no like, I mean, unless you have earphones on with music playing, there's no soundtrack going on telling you what to feel particularly. So it's like, yeah,
And
I definitely wanted to replicate the I guess the anxiety of silence, if that makes any sense.
that makes tons of sense. In fact, I forget the term for it, but there's actually um I forget the term. I forget the name of the term, but it's the feeling of seeing a place that's normally full of life and bustling, and seeing it so empty. Like currently, right now, I'm on a college campus. I'm a college student, and I'm so used to seeing my department, the the union where the cafeteria and the bookstore is, and the entire campus just flooded full of people. But certain hours of the night, certain hours of the day, and weekends and holidays, it's just dead. And I can walk through my college campus, and I can have my earbuds in and I can take them out and I can hear my music from where I'm standing all around the college campus or even in my department. And I know this place. It's familiar to me, but it's so unsettling.
Yeah, there's a like I guess an office kind of I guess it's an entrepreneurship kind of office where people can kind of go in and work on their own stuff. But sometimes I go there really early when like the lights will turn on automatically to the first person that walks in. But it was kind of jarring, not like opening the door just to see if like I could get in, and then just sort of realizing this place is like completely empty. And yeah, like there are moments like that that I really like.
Oh yeah. Okay, so our next question is how long has it been, or how long did it take you to develop Cryopolis? Didn't you say it was a month?
Yeah, it was a month. The timing of it was interesting because I think almost halfway through, or like the later one third of development, I just got very demotivated. So it was kind of more like a 2/3 of a month where I did a lot of fast developing, and then it kind of like dipped a bit. Like I was just kind of scrambling to get all the things together rather than develop anything. And that's kind of the main gripe I had with it. Is just like, yeah, I wish I made it longer. Um, but the thing is, like, the game got eighth place on the judges panel thing for the contest, so it kind of made me go, oh, I wish I was more motivated all the way through
Hmm.
and put all the effort in. But that's what happens, I guess.
Well, I still feel like you left a lasting impression on the people who played the game. It did get good reviews, as far as I know.
Yeah. yeah, someone who does a lot of kind of uh, game let's plays for the site rpgmaker.net gave it like a 4.5, I think, out of
Wow.
5. I was like kind of surprised, but yeah, it was like, yeah, it makes me wonder like, oh, what would happen if I had, gone back in time and just put a little more. I don't know. I guess I can't really do much about it if it's like to do with burnout and whatnot.
Yeah. So our next question is, where do you plan to take it? And I believe you touched on this before, but could you reiterate?
Yeah, I guess basically, I kind of want to sort of look at because basically I'm thinking my next project is going to be a commercial kind of endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm thinking like maybe do something very similar to this, but it might be its own thing. I'm still kind of trying to figure out. There's some aspects of Cryopolis which are kind of hard to develop for in terms of like basically my art production pipeline, I guess, and I'm kind of revamping how I do that. I guess it's kind of hard to go into detail about that, but basically, um, I'll probably do something similar to Cryopolis is like what I can say.
All right. So, in addition to Cryopolis, how many games have you made so far?
Um, it's hard to actually kind of hard to answer now to think about it. I basically made 7 games in 2018. Some of them were like collaboration projects and whatnot, and I probably made over like 20 games to this date.
Hmm.
Over that number, that rough estimate. I made one big commercial game. It's not big, but it's called Over My Dead Body for You, which was like a zombie ghost like puzzle game. It's a lot more lighthearted than what I normally make, but that was a commercial project I did with like 4 other people, and it was kind of didn't like do too well sales wise, but I learned a lot from it. It was like a huge endeavor, and it was like 3 years making it, and it's just like kind of on and off, and we had like full-time jobs, and yeah, that's a lot of my sort of game making direction was kind of influenced by that, where I kind of wanted to do something more solo and more focused and more faster, I guess. So I ended up making a lot of games last year.
All right. And is this your last game?
Uh, Probably not. Maybe it might be the last like. Well, actually, did I make a game after this? I'm trying to remember. Uh, I think it's the last game I made this year or on 2018, but probably not the last game ever. It might be the last freeware game in a while, or last freeware major game, because I'm kind of thinking of just going headfirst into commercial game development and seeing where that goes.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's just kind of interesting to see where the trends are and how the freeware, I guess, reception was, because it's hard to tell going from like just downloads from people that you know don't have to pay any money versus like sales where it's like you have to pay money and also download the game kind of thing.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I definitely want to make a bunch of games in the future.
Well, that's great. I look forward to it. So now, Cryopolis is a very interesting game as it's in a dystopian setting. So where did you draw the inspiration from?
I guess my main one, it's like I guess a very skew of different things, but I guess the main one was like, have you ever of the movie Stalker
Yes,
by Andrew Tavosky?
I think I've
I
seen
don't know
it.
if
I've seen it before, but I don't think I've ever sat down to watch it.
yeah, it's like a very it's very lonely atmospheric movie for not a lot of talking, a lot of drawn out sequences, but it's also kind of taking place in these very empty like Russian landscape kind of thing, and it was kind of like the it kind of pivoted me towards actually appreciating post-apocalyptic stuff. Um, and I guess I wanted. There's also a manga called Blame with an exclamation point. I don't know if you heard of it.
Yeah, I'm an avid
Um,
reader, so I've seen a little bit of everything, and I've read lots of series. I saw Blame, but I just haven't gotten the chance to look into it. And when I did, I just didn't really get all that into the setting. I might go back and take a look at it though, but I've heard of it.
yeah, like the story. There's not really much of a story there, so much as like it's more of like trying to give you a sense of place, a sense of like setting. I don't know. It's kind of it's actually like something I wasn't into at first either, but then it kind of grew on me a little bit, and I was like, man, there's no game out there that kind of does it. Maybe the Soul series a little bit, but I just felt like there needed to be more games in that kind of uh, oppressive landscape kind of setting that
Okay,
went into
so
this.
in a sense, you could say you didn't see a lot of games like that, so you thought if there aren't any games like that, then I'll just make one.
Yeah, that's a lot of my motivation comes from making games that way. Is just yeah, like I want to see more of this kind of thing.
Hmm. It's very interesting. The only reason why I say it's very interesting is the last interview I did for Pixelbox. He actually had the kind of same motivation. He didn't see a lot of games like the game that he was developing, so he just buckled down and did it himself. So it's a very interesting thing. It's more than likely just pure coincidence, but it's interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, I think it's like there's kind of like this sort of there's kind of almost like a market analysis kind of approach where hey, it's not just about like I want to make this game but better. It's also about hey, what's sort of missing? What are people like actually hungry for? Um, and hoping that sort of aligns with your own tastes and making that basically.
All right. Now the last question that I have is actually kind of uh subjective, if you will. It's how do you feel about indie game platforms? Uh, Platforms like Itch and GameJolt, websites that offer game developers a chance to spread their name like that. How do you feel about them? Do they do a good enough job of doing that, or do you feel like if they got a little bit more attention, then they could show more people what other people have to offer?
I think they're so like I've been around the space for a long time before Itch or Game Jolt or like for a long time there wasn't like a freeware game website that was like an actual database or like I guess a Steam equivalent for like free indie games, and there's always been kind of the hugest problem of basically fulfilling not just a system where like you can push your game up and it's very easy to download it and whatnot, but also like the exposure, like the front page exposure, if your game has like a proper chance. And I think Game Jolt in a weird way seems to do a lot better with that. Where it's like if you make a brand new game, the newness of that game will actually get exposed a lot. While Itch is sort of like that, but only if you get picked up by like the I guess the admins. I don't know how the system works, but sometimes like some games will just not get any exposure on itch, whereas it's a little more consistent on Game Jolt.
All right, yeah.
And yeah, like I'm kind of hoping like they basically overtake Steam in terms of like because they're bringing in like the commercial aspect of it as well, and I think it'd be really great if they sort of replace Steam in a way, but Steam is also kind of has like a freeware thing going on, but you still have to pay like a fee to
And
get
it
your game.
doesn't it also have to be greenlit? Like it has to be greenlit by the community before something goes on.
That's actually changed. There's a thing called Steam Direct
Ah,
where your game will basically just get kind of automatically. It goes through. I think there's some sort of check to prevent like illegal content or whatever, but for the most part, they've streamlined it a lot more, which people are kind of complaining about. But at the same time, it's like this ongoing thing. It's a very brand new frontier of like, well, how what threshold does a game need uh, to what does it need to reach in order to be acceptable to be put on a front on a marketplace of sorts. Like I guess we're like with itch it's sort of like, hey, it doesn't really matter what game you put on there. But like the what game jolt, I think there's a little there's like it's harder, it's slightly harder to submit a game just because there's more stuff you have to input and stuff like that. But it's kind of interesting to see how that develops, where there's sort of either you have an extreme hands off where like, hey, you can submit whatever you want, or no, you have to abide by these sort of guidelines and submit correctly and whatnot.
Yeah,
Um, Interesting to see where that goes. So I don't know. I guess I feel like it could always be better in terms of like seeing how well your game does and stuff like that. With Game Jolt is kind of weirder now. They've also kind of hidden the downloads, like public downloads of games, which makes it harder to see how well other games are doing. But I guess you can still just look at the views anyway. But I've been kind of paying attention to like how well my games do versus other people's, and seeing if that's like if I did something that caught their eye or what. And it's just sort of a very constant like thing to do. It's like very easy to get lost in. But
hmm.
yeah, that's just my general thoughts on the thing. I don't know if it's like good or bad or what, but I guess my gut feeling is like if I feel like itch and Game Jolt should try to overtake Steam if they can.
Yeah, okay, I can understand that. Steam is a very big platform. It's known. It's known. That's pretty much all I can say about it. Most of most of anyone today, if you ask them if they play video games, they're probably gonna respond with yeah. And then if you say what console, there's a good chance that they'll say online through Steam. I can see that.
Yeah, I remember before Steam even came out, it was just sort of like it's just a platform where you buy Valve games, and like the PC market was like non-existent. And there was it was really weird. Like freeware games on the PC were kind of also like harder to find because it was mostly like flash games, I guess. But it's kind of the landscape's definitely changing. And yeah, it's interesting to see how like Steam has sort of become basically like the PC de facto standard um, for downloading games.
I didn't plan this question originally, but I feel like I gotta ask this. You did say that the industry was changing for freeware games. Do you think it's changing in a good sense or a bad sense?
I mean, it's hard to say. There's a lot of doom and gloom about like the indie apocalypse that they're kind of a lot of people are dubbing it as. But I'm kind of still confident that it's just like a lot of things are just like oscillating. I guess it's very easy to kind of get pessimistic about it. But I because a lot of people are saying that hey, the more games that get in, the more saturated it gets, so that therefore it's harder to get noticed or whatever. But if you think about like any other medium, like books or movies, that's always been kind of the way it was. So I think we're just kind of out of that phase of like if you got on, it used to be like in 2010, if you got on Steam at all, it'd be like, oh wow, like you're guaranteed success. But now if you get on Steam, it's just okay. Now you have to kind of do your marketing, do your promotion, do all this like hard work to get noticed. And that's kind of the grind with any other kind of medium. So I just think it's kind of gaming is just becoming more of a normal thing, like a part of our media and culture. So
Yeah. Well, that's most of all the questions that I had for you, including one bonus question. So if you have anything for me, now would be the time to ask it.
yeah, I guess I was asked like, hey, like what games do you sort of gravitate towards when you do playthroughs and stuff like that?
Well, I don't really have one set genre that I like to play. Growing up as a child, I played strictly one type of game, and that was Nintendo games. And as a kid, I missed out on lots of good stuff. And what I try and focus on more now is focusing on games that catch my eye. So, uh, it might seem like most of my videos revolve around games that I just go on to a page, look around for a little bit, grab anything that looks good, and see if it runs and see if I can commentate about it. But basically, what I do is I go on websites and I pick through everything. And there are some games that I think that I'd love to play and love to talk about, and there are other games that I just don't really gravitate towards. And the reason for that being is they're not bad games. It's just me as an individual, I don't feel like I would enjoy playing that game. And if I don't enjoy playing something, then I can't necessarily commentate about it. And that's just pretty much it. I would love to get to a point where I could just play indie games and give them the spotlight that I feel like they deserve, because a lot of the indie games that I play, I like them a lot and I give them really good reviews and really great ratings, and I tell my friends about them, not because I think that they're great, but I think that they need more exposure, that they need to be rated and reviewed, because it's it's such a thing that gets overlooked. And I don't know, my previous experience when I was a child and missing out on so many games, it kind of makes me feel like I want other people to experience what I've experienced, in the sense that they're great games. I'm probably repeating myself, but that's just all I can say about it. They're great games, and I feel like they need more exposure.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of like how a journalist would sort of look for like a good story, right? Like there needs to be some kind of hook or thing to talk about, but also the sort of need to sort of get it out to the world, I guess.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I guess it's pretty cool that people like you do a lot of gameplay. I guess are they still called Let's Plays? I'm not sure.
I don't know what they're called anymore. I still call them Let's Plays. Whenever I was first on YouTube, they were called walkthroughs, and then they went from walkthroughs to Let's Plays, and now there are so many names for them. I know me myself, as a YouTuber, my personification calls them adventures. I call them adventures. It's just something that I use to hook people in and kind of get them into the feeling of it. But I call them Let's Plays. I don't really know what they're called, but that's what I will always call them.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to see how like games sort of become a different kind of content once they're sort of recorded and played by someone else's experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have any questions. I believe I have.
Well, that's all the questions that I had. Thank you very much for answering them and taking the time to join me and the Pixel Box.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Well, I guess that's it. So I guess we're ready for the outro. So my name has been Captain Gordell, and this is my special guest Sweep.
Yeah, you can find me at Schweinheap on Twitter.
All right. And if you don't want to go ahead and search that, if you want to be super lazy, you can always find it down in the description below. I will also link down the Kryopolis page down below if you want to go and check that game out for yourself. Like I said before, go and follow Sweep on Twitter. Show him some love. Go download Kryopolis, give it a play, and tell me what you think in the comments. Tweet at Sweep if he doesn't mind that. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. And as per usual, to stop my ramblings and to get you guys on your way, my name's Captain Cordell, and I'm shipping out.